I'm Mary Ellen Isaacs, and I'm the current clerk of the Colombia Ministry Committee. Other people from the committee who are here, please wave your hands so we see you. Um, we're really excited to have this forum. It's really the the pandemic has made Zoom seem so normal, and it's like, well, why aren't we inviting Paul and Carol into our space more often to talk about Colombia Ministry? So Colombia Ministry started in 1992 when Paul and Carol, who are members of our meeting, and Paul's a former clerk of our meeting, decided after some discernment to return to Bogota, Colombia, where they had spent some time where Paul grew up, and Carol also grew up in Latin America. And they were really called to return there for a ministry of social service and peace work in particular. And so the meeting, they requested support from the meeting in the form of a committee to help with the discernment, but also for continued support because, as you'll hear them talk, they feel a strong connection to us still. And we are connected to them by virtue of the work that they are doing as an extension of our own peace testimony. Every year we do a minute to reaffirm the meeting's support of this work. And I pulled it up today. The minute is quite simple. It just says, Friends Meeting of Austin reaffirms its support of the ministry of Paul Stuckey and Carol Byler, members of our meeting living and working in Bogota, Colombia. And we, as a committee and as a meeting, support their work in several ways. Through the committee meeting with them as regularly as we can. We have a Colombia Ministry Fund as a line item in our budget to support this work. And then Paul and Carol manage Noah's Ark Fund, which was started by a dear friend of theirs, and that they carry on this work, giving microloans to people in Colombia. And it's just an incredible fund. It's changed lives through small contributions that are of great meaning to the people who receive them. So I just really wanted to set the stage that we really see this as an outreach of our own work, and that this isn't just a committee, but really a committee in support of ministry. So welcome, Paul and Carol. I think most people here know about you, but a few people probably don't. And so we're excited to hear from you a little bit about your journey, and then kind of what's happening now, and the Noah's Ark Fund, and any questions. So I think if you guys want to talk for about maybe 20 minutes, and then we'll leave some time for questions. And I'll watch the chat if people want to put questions in.
Yeah, good morning. It's really nice to be here, and yes, one of the blessings of the pandemic is that we've been able to connect more frequently to meeting and to be in touch in this way. So thank you very much. Yeah, am I talking loud enough so that you can hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. One of us here is Carol and one of us is Paul. And I'll say a little bit about, as taking off on what you said, Mary Ellen. I'm going to just start by saying a bit about us and our history with the meeting and in Colombia, and then come up to more current events. I'm gonna share the screen here, just to make it a little bit more illustrative, just to show where Carol and I originally came from. I'm originally from Colombia in South America, and Carol was born in Argentina, and then raised in Argentina, grew up in Argentina and Uruguay. So that's kind of where we started. We got to the Austin Friends meeting in 1987, and before that we had been in Galveston, and with the Galveston meeting, where Carol was in medical school, and I was at that time working in Houston. But anyway, we have memories of that time in Galveston. I mean, in Austin, and there was a time of this is a sort of
great proliferation.
Yes, and it was a very special time for us. The Austin meeting was our community, and as Mary Ellen says, a community of faith and friendship that has continued to this day. We had two sons who began their lives there, and as Mary Ellen said, I was also blessed with the opportunity of serving as clerk of the meeting part of that time, and the meeting also accompanied us in hard times, specifically Carol's bout with cancer, and that brought us close. We following a clearness process, we did move back to Colombia, or moved to Colombia, actually, maybe is a better way to say it, where we felt we could contribute our skills in medicine by Carol and psychology by me. So we left Austin, and that was a sad time for us, but we're grateful that the ties have bound us together all these years. This is when we're getting onto the train. And when we first came to Colombia, we worked in a rural, sort of an intentional community in a rural area, where there was an intentional community of campesinos, small farmers, and professionally trained people working in various capacities. In our case, we worked in health, education, and organizing and treatment in rural areas. And there's Carol giving a class, but it was also organizing around health, the right to health care, and citizen participation in health, local and community health policy. So we were there about 4 years, and then we moved to Bogota, where from in 1996 we moved there, where Carol worked with Mencoldes, a Mennonite project, in her case working with victims of the armed conflict and medical attention, and later she went on to actually be a co-director of that organization. I worked with Justa Paz in peace building, nonviolence, and conflict transformation, in various, working out of Bogota, but in various parts of the country, strengthening community and church initiatives in those areas. And then later, and in more recent years, working in a project to support church initiatives in trauma healing for victims of violence, both of the armed conflict, which has been going on for years, as well as many other forms of conflict. And we continued that for some 20 plus years until more recently, where we have both now not directly connected with that, but have continued in work. And I want to just show you a few pictures here to give you an idea. These are some pictures of Bogota around the area where we live. This is a park near where we live, and I wanted to just show those things on the side there, which are initiatives to put compost to good use. And but this is sort of around where we live and go for walks, and this is, there are a lot of little shops there where we do our shopping, and so we try to take good care of ourselves, as does everybody else, with a mask and distancing, but we do. This is the kind of, in this case, it's where we buy our cheese and eggs. This is to give you an idea. These are sort of one of the main avenues near where we are. Those are the public transit buses as well as the streets. So this is just to give you an idea of what it's like now, and just to say a little bit about the Colombian context now. Because of both government policy as well as the drastic impact of the quarantine and COVID, poverty is up from 36% to about 42%, and poverty would mean a person living on less than $88 a month.
A family, probably.
And of that, a significant point is the second point there, that almost 7.5 million people are in what's called extreme poverty, which is living on less than $38 a month, approximately. The exchange rate varies, but to give you an idea. And so that means that for a large part of the population to be able to just make ends meet, to have food on the table is very, very difficult and very stressful, of course, too. And then in addition to that, there are almost 2 million Venezuelan migrants coming here from Venezuela. I suppose it's jumping from the fire into the frying pan, because Venezuela is, from all we're able to know, even much worse off than in Colombia. We're now at sort of a third peak of COVID, and while people are very careful about distancing and masks and so forth, when you make a living informally, that is, in ways which don't allow you, for example, to have a regular job and to work from home, that means you have to go out, you have to do what you have to do to make a living. And so it's just hard to control COVID, and that with the slowness with which vaccines come here. And so it's been difficult in that sense too. Also, the peace accords, which were signed about 4 years ago with the government and the main guerrilla group, have had a very erratic compliance, and I'd say notably low by the government. The government currently in power was not in favor of the accords, and so not surprising that they'd be dragging their feet in spite of what they say. And then there's drug trafficking and armed groups, and the government, with encouragement from the U.S. government, is trying to restart aerial fumigation with Roundup, and with all the implications of that. I want to just show you a little bit of what poverty and resourcefulness look like. These are the people who, with these carts, do the recycling. They come through the neighborhoods collecting what they can then to sell and recycle. People sleeping on the streets. This is a rather well-stocked shop on the street where they sell all kinds of things to eat for people, and also sell what it says minutes to cell phone there for people to make cell phone calls. Here's somebody going through the trash. Here's some people selling flowers, and all this has also led then in recent days to, in spite of all this, and in spite of some positive steps by the government to address the economic duress of the quarantine, the government initiated a tax reform which would have increased value-added taxes on basic food supplies and on utilities, and lowering the threshold at which people have to pay income tax. In addition, they're proposing a health reform, which would most likely make things much worse for people. If you pardon my comparison, it would make our system much similar to the United States, which would be very disadvantageous for us here. So mass demonstrations began, and you can see the sign there: "Long live the national strike," and "No to the tax reform." And there have been killings of people. A couple days back, there had been 26 dead and some 548 people reported as disappeared. Those are the official statistics. Human Rights Watch puts it up at as high as 31 dead. And that's just a few days back. So this is calling on the president to stop the massacres. And then there were signs from all, in this cases, of teachers saying, "Don't kill us, we protect your children, we teach your children." So a lot of action on the streets, which is continuing to this day. And we participated in that. There's Carol and Lucas on the right, and a cousin on the left, and cousin on the right. And just to say that you're probably aware of this, but at last May 6th in Austin, there was I don't know how much it's continued, but on May 6th, there was this public action in Austin as well. The meetings, some very specific things that the meeting has been supportive of now most recently. One is a ministry and is a work on the far south of the metropolitan area, which is a food program, a meals program, and also helping children with schoolwork. Although at this point now, school classes are suspended, and people who can afford to get a computer and pay for internet, sometimes there's some subsidies, but for many it's very hard. Schools are doing things only virtually at this point. They may go back to some classes. And then there's the work with Noah's Ark, which has been contributing in a very practical way to justice, peace, and the dignity of families who are victims of both the political, social, and economic inequity and violence. And how that happens is through financial and food support, but very much through accompaniment, through conversation, through encouragement, through communicating respect. And it's all about real people, real families experiencing the anguish of vulnerability, and being able to know that they're not alone. These are just some of the people that we and with your support have been able to help. Alberto Peñalosa, a victim of armed conflict. We helped him get going on an egg selling business, but then with the quarantine, it was going okay for a while, but then everything really got shut down, and so that's failed. And there's Deyanira Sosa. She's an older woman, and her husband, both with very serious illnesses. She was working as a cook, he is a musician, but now they're not able to do anything of that because of the COVID and the quarantine. Edgar Martinez is a older middle-aged man who's raised a daughter on his own. He makes a living by shining shoes, and so you can imagine how hard that is. Gladys Vera is a woman who's raising two daughters, one of whom has become physically and somewhat mentally impaired because she was the victim of a bomb, and it's really actually amazing how people can somehow make a living through it all. Well, I could go on through the names of these people, uh, and I wish we could share with you some of their words of gratitude when they write us. Jose and Marta Rincon, he was a teacher. She worked in a printing outfit, and but now they had a child, and he's as a teacher. He's an older man now and hasn't been able to get work. Liliana Gomez. Um, they had a sort of a large construction business, but not nearly able to compete with the large construction corporations. So they've been trying to figure out how to make a living.
Originally displaced.
They're originally also displaced by the war, and now they tried one thing after another. Their initiative and resilience is just so overwhelming, so amazing. Now trying to now what they're doing is sewing, and actually sewing lingerie and apparently being able to sell it. Omeris and Nora are two sisters uh, who each have five children, and they live separately, but each of them attempts to sell things on the street to make a living. So as you can imagine, anybody like that for whom we're able to offer help, it's a message, it's a message of hope, of knowing that people care, plus just helping them survive. The last I put down there was Isla Margarita, Venezuela. We've recently sent some money to folks in Venezuela because the situation there is just incredibly drastic, and so we are able to send some money there. They have to, when we send it, they have to take the money that they can get and then buy things almost immediately, because the devaluation is so great that the purchasing power of the money just goes down very fast. So but anyway, so these are people who we've helped, and you've helped with Noah's Ark. They have little messages there, as you can see. There's a little arrow here where she is speaking, but it's in Spanish, and we'll skip that. But this is a woman from Venezuela, and this is in Venezuela actually, where they've taken the money and then they help numerous with feeding numerous people, and they've been baking bread, so they stretch it out in that way too, and as well as planting. In this case, as you can see, there's squash and the beginning of yucca there. Oh, this was just a picture of I had mentioned about Alberto selling eggs. These were some of his accounting that he would keep track of how many eggs he was selling and what his earning was, and then we would help him. We would continue with some more with that until he finally was able to kind of get on his own. We've also been collaborating with Mennonite Central Committee and a mission agency from England in food parcels for both Colombians and Venezuelan migrants. And so this is just a picture here of organizing the markets, and this is a Venezuelan couple that had come by. So how Noah's Ark works is that through the meeting, donations are received there, they're deposited there. We can withdraw the money here, and then with that we can donate make donations to people that we know. And that's an important part where there are people that we know, and so it's part of a broader relationship. And then there's an accountant here who reviews our accounting and sends a report to Terry English once every 3 months. And last year, there were about 109 households that we were able to support in this way, but not just once, several times, maybe every month, every other month, sort of depending how the situation was, either with food or with some help to pay utility bill,
Health needs.
health needs. In the past, we also helped some. We've helped some students with some of their tuition expenses. So that's been a way too. So just one more, maybe just to say one more thing. Just one more thing to maybe round off this part is that there's a spirituality that sustains us in all of this, and I want to start by expressing our deep appreciation to the meeting for your caring, your accompaniment, your support, and concretely to the Colombia Ministry Committee and to those of you who have come to visit. And we see what we do here very much in sync with what you are doing there in Austin. I know you have that. We know you have that emergency fund right now, but there are the other ways as well that you reach out in caring and with actions of justice, and it's so important. I've early Quakers, when at the time of George Fox and afterwards, as you know, they suffered a lot at the hands of both the English government as well as from the religious establishment of the time, and many lost their homes, they had their property, their money confiscated, many were imprisoned, and in response, they formed what they called meetings for sufferings, to address both the government policies which were leading to this kind of treatment of Quakers, as well as addressing the needs. And then those meetings for sufferings later on took on other matters too. And as I understand it, that structure with that name, as I understand it, continues among British Friends, still under the umbrella of a definition from 1883 as a standing committee of the meeting, entrusted with the general care of whatever may arise during the intervals of this meeting, affecting our religious society and requiring immediate attention. So I think that both what's being done in Austin, what we're able to do here, is very much in that tradition. And I think these ministries are also very much in keeping with the well-known text from Matthew 25. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me. Maybe it would be added, I was on death row and you wrote me and you advocated for me. So just to say that we here are blessed with a number of worship settings to nourish and encourage our faith and practice. We've been grateful for the times when we've been able to connect for a meeting for worship with all of you. Sometimes that crosses with some of our meetings here, so it's not so easy, but it was actually a little easier before you went to daylight savings. But that's been something we value a lot. There's also the Teusaquillo Mennonite Church here. We also participate in a weekly Sunday evening worship sharing type group with a small group from both from our traditions as well as from the Catholic Church. That's been important. And every other week we also take part in a prayer practice of the Taizé tradition. I don't know if you're familiar with Taize, and this is all virtual at this point. And then in addition, Carol is also participating in sittings with a local Buddhist temple here. So we're grateful for all those various opportunities for worship and for meeting together with others. So I think I'll stop there. Carol wanted me to do all the talking, but I'm sure now that I stop, and if you have comments and questions, then you can bring her in.
Don't have to.
But anyway, we want to turn it back to you and hear also what you have to say and your questions, but also from the Colombia Ministry Committee, your perspective on this. So the time is there, Mary.
Paul, one thing that I think most people know about Noah's Ark is that the donations are quite small by U.S. standards of philanthropic giving or support to members of the community, and that means that the fund can go a longer way. At the same time, as clerk of the committee, I want to let everyone know that it's easy to donate to this committee in terms of donation to meeting, and just put Noah's Ark in the memo line. We had large gifts for Noah's Ark for a number of years from some bequests from some families in their wills. We're spending a little more than we have coming in. The balance is still pretty large, but it's such an important ministry, and I just felt the need to put that plug in.
No, all I would say is that, yeah, the amounts we give out is anything from $5 to $30, $40. Sometimes when we help people get started on some little project to try to generate income, it might be more like $100 to get them going. But yeah, it's very small amounts, but given the situation here, it makes a big difference. And I think very important what Paul said, that the accompaniment and the connection and the sense of being remembered or thought of is really important. Paul spends a lot of time on the phone listening to people and talking with people.
Paul and Carol, curious about the access to education for the children in San Nicolas and other very poor communities. They can't really do Zoom classes or such, can they?
Terry, we missed the first part of what you were saying. Could you say it again?
Yes. The children in San Nicolas and in other very poor communities, can they have access to classes on Zoom or some other such? Do they have computers? Do they have internet?
Yeah, well, what they do is that they do things via cell phone. They get a package of like lessons, and they do them, and then they photograph the lesson and send it to the teacher. But that means they have to have minutes on a cell phone with some data. And, you know, so it's hard. It's been very hard, but, you know, they continue doing something.
The other thing that some schools do is that if they have no access, then the schools have to print out paper guides for them to work on. But at this point, along that line, Terry, from a gift in the United States of someone in the States has given 2 used laptops, which then are being mailed here, and then we will give that to 2 families to so that their children can connect in virtually. But yeah, the need is enormous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess.
There are a couple of questions in the comments in the
Aha.
chat.
Let's see. What is Isla Margarita? Isla Margarita is an island off the coast, off the Caribbean coast of Venezuela. It's a part of Venezuela, and it's one of the places where we have, well, those pictures were where we sent some money, and
We can do that.
are people getting vaccinated?
People are getting vaccinated very slowly. They get small shipments of vaccines of 3-4 different kinds at this point, 3 different kinds. And Paul got his second vaccine on Friday, for which we're very grateful. And it seems like possibly next week I'll get it. But it's a very, very small percentage of the population. I mean, I think we're very fortunate that our particular health delivery plan is vaccinating us, but I don't really know the number, but it's a very small percentage and it's going very, very slowly. But you know, they are coming.
In my case, I was vaccinated by a Chinese vaccine called Sinovac, and they've started with the medical people and the oldest people, and they're sort of coming down the line, going down the age group. That's why Carol may be able to get vaccinated next week. So what's come in right now at this point has been Sinovac from China, AstraZeneca from Europe, and some Pfizer. Pfizer has come in as well.
I have a
Jennifer,
question.
jump in. Yeah.
So I don't understand, what's the source of the violence going on right now? What's the protest specifically protesting against? What is the government actually doing to people that's causing these deaths and disappearances?
What motivated the mobilization starting the 28th was a proposed tax reform that was going to begin to put a 19% tax on utilities, was going to begin to tax basic food items of the basic food supply, and also was going to lower the threshold at which people would have to begin to report and pay taxes. So that was the initial spark of it, and then after about 4 or 5 days of this, the government took back
Withdrew the proposal.
And actually the minister, what would be in the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, or whatever, whoever's in charge of economics, resigned. But I think that's a bit the tip of the iceberg. And I think also there's just a lot of pent up powerlessness and frustration which has come out. And so on the one hand, there's been, while the marches have been and the nurse is way, by all accounts, mostly peaceful. There have been times of destruction of bus stops and of businesses and
Police stations.
and the police responding with undue force and shooting, and then the like in certain areas where people were filming with their cell phones, filming what was going on, then they cut off the internet so that could not be streamed out. And there are reports from people of what appear to be police in civilian clothing or army going out actually and shooting. But there are other things. The truckers are on strike because of the cost of fuel and the high cost of the
Toll stations. or
the
whatever.
toll booths, the highway tolls. So they're blocking, they're part of the blocking of the roads, which means that there's a scarcity of food supplies in the cities. And there's an objection to the lack of implementation of the peace accords. So it's just kind of an accumulation of things. It's an accumulation of things which I think just sort of has boiled over, and there's a question, I guess, on the other hand, of how long this kind of thing should go on. The demonstration should go on, lest it also lead to sort of a backlash. One of the positive things that the government is doing now is that it has opened up conversations with the various sectors of society and with the organizers of the mobilizations and with the students and with the workers, and that's positive. You know, if a lot of that had been done before, lives could have been saved, destruction could have been saved, but this is where we are now, and it's continuing at this point.
Quick follow-up. When you guys were marching, what were you marching specifically about?
The tax reform and the health care reform.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And well, the thing is that it's everything, because it's also the killing of civilians, the killing of young leaders in rural areas and other community leaders. I just wanted to comment on something that came up in the chat about the security or danger of mugging. The help we give out is usually not in cash. It's through some kind of Western Union type of thing, and it's spread out all over the city. So there's no one place where people would know, hey, there's a, you know, somebody's getting money, or there's a place where you can go and get a microloan or something like that. It's very spread out in the whole city of 9 million people. So there's not a specific place where that would be a danger of mugging or robbery. The people, the individuals, are at risk because they live in dangerous neighborhoods, and that has happened, that people get all their things stolen, or they're trying to sell on the street and that all gets stolen. So a lot of times we have to help people after that happens to them, but it's not because they know that they're getting money from us.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Paul, you showed an image of a demonstration here in Austin. Can you tell us more about what that was, who organized that, and how we might be involved?
It was Colombian.
Yeah, there's a Facebook page. Let me just tell you what it is right now. A Facebook page called Colombianos en Austin. It's in Spanish, Colombianos en Austin.
Okay.
And that particular photo was on was on the 6th. And in fact, I'll show you, I can show you, this was the, let me just do it here. This was the poster they put out. Can you see that, Peloton in Austin?
Yeah, I found the site. I'm going to post it in the chat if you haven't already.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody did already. Thank you, Terry.
I fear that my sound is the culprit. Is it echoing?
Nope.
Okay. I went to my settings and tried to fix it. So, well, Paul and Carol, thank you so much. I think we have maybe just a few more minutes if there's one last question.
I had a question.
Larry's got it.
Yeah, in this country, Republicans use fear to motivate people to vote against their interests. And it sounds like the government has regressive tax policies, which are not in the interests of the people. How does the government motivate people to vote against their interests and keep them in power?
Yeah. I think that when elections take place, it's yeah.
It's a mystery to me how we keep, the same families, same wealthy families get elected to run the country when they obviously are pretty much always looking out for their own interests instead of the interests of the majority of the population. But when elections come around, I don't know if a lot of people don't vote. They also, in regions, they pay for votes. So there's a lot of corruption too. I don't know.
Well, and then, like in the last elections, there was the whole, the current administration won by a rather small margin, but there was a lot of sort of propaganda that the opposition candidate was going to turn Colombia into a Venezuela.
Oh, right.
Was going to Venezuelize Colombia. I think the economic logic of the ruling party is sort of the basic trickle down economics kind of notion that you support big enterprise and then the benefits will trickle down to the
it feels to me like the polarization is greater there than it is here, so that for somebody to contemplate arguing that there should be some redistribution of wealth, that the rich should pay a higher percentage of taxes than they do, would risk a greater violent response there. It just seems like there'd be more intimidation there than there even is here. Is that fair?
I don't know how to compare, Walter, but I think more it's here that so many people are just sort of living from hand to mouth,
Just on the edge.
just on the very edge, and it's probably more the middle class that can really mobilize more in some ways.
But are people at greater risk there, though, of being labeled communists and, if they suggest any kind of redistribution?
Yeah, yeah, that happens. And as I say, using the ghost of Venezuela as as if those things happen, that's where we're going to go. So we don't want that. So So that's kind of how it gets used. Mm.
My sense also is that there's a very large percentage of the population that because they live so on edge, they don't participate particularly in political dialogue or activity or whatever. And in fact, most of the people, I mean, the people marching are mostly students, professional. They aren't, although there was a big group of recyclers at that last march, and I think there's just a lot of, mistrust. Government is equal to corruption in a lot of people's minds. And so it's like, I don't get a sense that people have a lot of faith that you could get things to change, or that politicians would stop, steal. I mean, politicians and mayors and stuff were stealing the money that the government was giving to have food aid to people in the regions. And then it comes out that they're stealing the money instead of making food packages. I mean, it's just so pervasive that, well.
But then there's the other side. There's the other side of it too. Good things are happening. It's interesting maybe to note that the mayor of Bogota, a city of 9 million, is a lesbian married woman. And
yeah, that's
and the indigenous people, the tradition, are organized in ways which are asserting their rights to their territories. In other cities too, the alternative mayors are being elected, and things are happening, but things happen at their own pace. Mm. And I think all this is there was a poster which another picture we had of someone on the march which said something. They thought they were killing us, but we are seeds. And I think that vision, this whole thing, it's tragic, the deaths and the suffering and the destruction and the loss of people's abilities to work. But that vision that these are seeds which will grow is important. But I want to say then that the kind of work in nonviolence, in alternatives to violence, in peace building, is very crucial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something too that has been growing and growing and has wider and wider acceptance. So I think that it's a hopeful present and a hopeful future.
Well, it doesn't. Go ahead.
In spite of the sadness of what's happening, but yeah.
That's a good note for us to end on.
I really like what was posted. The same thing is happening here. I think we have to remember that we're really becoming more closer to each other in the way things are happening.
Mm-hmm. I also, just as a final note, I think a young man that from one of your spiritual communities took a conscientious objection case all the way to the Supreme Court and won.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of hope as well in the peace work. So, well, I hate
established an important precedent too.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
I just looked up. They thought they were killing us, but we're seeds, to figure out its origin, because I suspected it might be Che Guevara or something. And
Romero for sure.
Well, actually, what I found was, and I don't know if this is accurate, but one site says the quote comes from a poet, Dinos Christianopoulos, who was sidelined by the Greek literary community in the 1970s because he was gay. So
That's interesting. It was the title of my recent article in Friends Journal, Friends.
That's really good.
Wow.
That came from, I don't know where, but it was the
title. I don't know where it came from, though.
Seeds of Love.
Yeah.
And Larry Kelly Mahaffey posted that it's an Incan, an idea of the Incas. So
Mhm.
Well, we like
Friends,
it.
settle in Georgia.
Thank you,
so
Paul
much.
and Carol, so much.
you,
It's
guys.
such a
Thank
joy
you
to be
for
with
having
you.
us.
Just wanted to stick in that in Friends tradition, the seed is equivalent to the light.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
It's an honor, Paul and Carol, to support you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.